This is a scenario about hard bargaining and compromises that bring about an inclusive approach to land reform with a special focus on the poor. But what leads to hard bargaining and compromise, and how does it roll out? Well, in 2016, poverty and inequality are deeply ingrained in our society and economic growth is slow. However, as the global conditions gradually ease, social compacts and negotiated agreements paved the way for increased growth in South Africa. In the run-up to the 2019 national elections, there is considerable pressure on the ruling party. Public resources are declining, leadership changes must be negotiated, and a groundswell of sentiment within the government causes a change in thinking. After the elections, the ruling party is faced with reduced support from voters, so it moves to share the burden of governance. Because of this new approach, the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform reaches out to create partnerships with strategic stakeholders. The goal of these initial negotiations is to unclutter the policy agenda. Incentives are offered to get private landowners, financiers, NGOs, local communities, universities, input suppliers and retailers to get on board by supporting land and agrarian reform. Small-scale farmers are further supported by public and private organizations. The Subdivision of Agricultural Land Act is repealed and ceilings on farm sizes are retracted. At the same time, unused freehold land is taxed and uncompetitive behavior is controlled. Standard settlement offers made up of part cash and part housing are negotiated for claimants seeking financial restitution. And land acquisition is accelerated by focusing on just and equitable compensation without undermining agricultural productivity. Following these initiatives, new relationships start to bear fruit, even though operating conditions remain difficult. District land reform committees start to identify land for redistribution. They also enforce compliance with the Agri-BEE Charter and monitor farm worker evictions. However, unreliable rainfall puts dry land agriculture under pressure and maize production declines. Also, as the demand for commodities increase, so do agricultural commodity prices, which causes a rise in food prices. Through all of this, the rand remains weak, which helps exporters but increases the cost of imports. A weak currency also encourages farmers to mechanize and increase the concentration of farming activities. But by this time, 5,000 black small-scale farmers have entered formal supply chains, and 150,000 more continue to supply informal markets. However, for those in communal areas, banks continue to reject communal rights as collateral for loans. Nevertheless, land reform has now become a shared responsibility among a wide range of stakeholders, including government, farmers, large and small, land reform beneficiaries, civil society organizations, and financing partners. This has been made possible by an enabling state committed to pro-poor land and agrarian reform. On the ground, there is a growing plurality in the South African countryside and a greater diversity of land holding and land use. Hard bargaining and compromise has also resulted in a legislative environment where land rights are clearer and transparent partnerships are developing between small landowners, commercial farmers, and active citizens. 40% of agricultural land outside the former homelands is now black-owned, and there are different scales of agricultural production around cities and in rural areas. By 2030, South Africa is benefiting from improved growth and greater cooperation. Even in the face of continuing challenges, the growth rate has moved up to 3.5%. There is rising optimism and a greater sense that opportunities and challenges can be better addressed when they're shared. And even though food security remains fragile at both the national and household levels, the stage is now set to tackle outstanding issues, such as the security of tenure for farm workers and backyard shack dwellers, the proliferation of informal settlements, and the development of communal land. Following the hard bargaining and compromise scenario, the country is on a stable footing and poised for future growth. Smallholder farmers and the previously excluded poor are the winners, and the losers are those who want to use land as a source of patronage and privilege. This is a scenario about hard bargaining and compromises, an inclusive approach to land reform with a special focus on the poor.